Throughout the 15th century, Florence retained its preeminence as an artistic center. It was into this culture that a teenage boy arrived around the mid-1460s. His family moved from a nearby Tuscan village where he was born. A precociously talented youth, he would take advantage of the opportunities for learning afforded by Florence, and developed into one of the most admired and sought-after artists of his time, Leonardo da Vinci.
As a painter, Leonardo certainly did deserve his reputation. He was an innovator in all sorts of ways, and one of the significant things about his paintings is that he was moving from the very stiff, very formalised composition of paintings, which was current up to that point, to something much more fluid, much more evocative. The use of colours and the way he painted the colours, all of this suggested a much more fluid, experimental approach.
From an early age, Leonardo demonstrated an insatiable appetite for study, and the sheer breadth of his research can be seen in his surviving notebooks. He studied anatomy, astronomy, physics, geography, and engineering, amongst the other subjects that today are the preserve of single-subject professionals. Now on display in the Louvre, Paris, it captures Leonardo's memory of a haunting smile he once found on a Florentine woman of his time.
The Mona Lisa is perhaps the most famous of Leonardo's paintings. It's, in fact, so famous it appears in images throughout the world, possibly more than any other painting that's ever been produced.
We're so used to seeing it in reproductions, on t-shirts, in ads, in anything, that we forget that actually it's a really, really tiny picture. It's very small. And who is it? That's the question that people always ask, because the lady in it has this famously enigmatic smile.
The significance of the Mona Lisa as a milestone in the history of art is that it shows consummate skill in two distinct techniques. The first one is called sfumato, and this is the infinitesimal grading of areas of colour into one another. And what this gives is a rather dewy picture, a smoke-filled scene, soft, without hard edges. The second technique is called chiaroscuro, and this is the modelling of forms, the bringing of form onto the canvas by the use of light and shade, and the juxtaposition of light and shade to suggest solid form.
Leonardo is very keen on these strange, romantic, evocative landscapes, and the back of the Mona Lisa, like many of his other paintings, has these strange mountains and sights not known to man, but which came out of Leonardo's imagination. He was amazingly fertile. He kept all these diaries and notebooks in which he'd write down any idea he had. And he saw himself not just as a painter, but as an inventor and an engineer and just a great thinker. And I think that comes across in paintings like the Mona Lisa, which are more than a painting. They really are about an attitude of mind or of thought. It's a way of seeing into Leonardo himself, really. Leonardo's Last Supper was painted for the refectory of a monastery called Santa Maria delle Grazie, Santa Maria of the Graces, in Milan. And it's a work which has been framed ever since the moment of its conception. People who were in Milan in the 15th century were commenting about its marvels. And it's really famous because it shows a very familiar subject in Christian iconography, the Last Supper. And this is the moment when Christ and his disciples are getting together, before Christ is going to be betrayed by Judas.
Up to that point, artists would have treated the 12 apostles as isolated individuals, and they would each have been formally painted in their own right. But what Leonardo did was grouped them into dynamic groupings of 3, and these were arranged around the figure of Christ and framed the figure of Christ. So the whole tenor of that painting, and it is truly a masterpiece, is a painting full of movement and full of life, which had hitherto not really been apparent in paintings of the period.
Here we see all of the apostles sitting having their meal off the same refectory tables that the monks themselves eat off.